And we move to a very critical part of Exodus. And it's very difficult in some quarters to speak the things that I speak to you in talking about such a thing as Exodus. And now you get to, here we are, the beginning of the story has concluded, and we move into the portion of the story which we have to approach slowly. And this portion is cosmic law. And I've told you about cosmic law, but we'll spend a lot of time talking about it, and we'll spend a lot of time in trying to understand it because it's critical to where we go from here as human beings. Cosmic law is not the type of thing that an average person can understand. If I tell you that Jesus was not crucified, most people cannot understand that. Even the existence. When I talk about the existence of Jesus, you're not able to understand that. If I say to you the Exodus never happened. See, what I have to challenge you to do is, you have one of these in your lap? Look at it. Look at the title on the cover. It says Bible. It doesn't say history book. It doesn't say it's a novel. It says Bible. What it means is it's spirit. It talks about spirit. And when you have a book in your hand that talks about spirit, it's describing things that are invisible. It's talking about things that you cannot see. It's talking about things that you cannot feel, you cannot see, you cannot touch. That's why it says Bible on the cover. Otherwise it would say history book. Or it would say it's a novel or an adventure book. It doesn't say any of those things. Even there are books that are written that are absolutely true. And they're written about adventures. They're written about history. They're written about things that went on. But this is a book that is not written about adventures. It's not written about history. It's not a novel. It's written about spirit. It's written about invisible things. And it uses words to convey to you understanding of these invisible things. And you can't, for the most part, take it. The things that I tell you, what I'm saying to you is, if you look at this thing, just about none of it is documentary at all. You can't prove any of it. So, what is it for then? It's to try, for us to try to get beyond the words and come finally into a point of understanding this, cosmic law. And how do we arrive at this? First of all, we found out you cannot understand cosmic law until first you understand what? Yourself. You can't get to cosmic love until you first get to cosmic law, and you can't get to cosmic law until you understand yourself. And that's the problem. We don't understand. You see this thing, everybody, you can't wait to get these Newsweek articles. Why? Because nobody knew you had melatonin in your body. You didn't know you had a pineal gland in your body. But the Bible says you do. Jesus said you do. Jacob said you do. It's all through the Bible. It's all through the ancient teachings. They talked about the pineal gland. It's in the Bible. They talked about melatonin. Jesus talked about it. It's in the Bible. But it's hidden. It's talking about invisible things that you can't see. So you have to first understand how to deal with yourself. And so Exodus took you from where? It took you out of Egypt, which is the place of bondage. It is your lower mind. The place of bondage is your fears, the guilt, all of the things that have been put into your head by your friends, by your family, by your churches, by the systems. All of this stuff made you guilty. Here are people that are talking about reading books, and if they see a lady in a nightgown, they have guilt. They get afraid. Oh, she's in a nightgown. That's real, but that's very sad. Oh, they're kissing. They're hugging. They're embracing. Oh, I can't see that. I can't watch that. I'm scared of that. Why are you afraid of people kissing and hugging? Oh, but they can't wait to watch a program about somebody with a machine gun, blowing somebody's head off as they charge up the hills and then drop bombs on people. No, not a problem with that. But she's in a nightgown, she's kissing. What am I going to do? Right. Because they don't understand, they live and dwell in guilt. Guilt and fear, constant, never ends. So what do? You have to, first of all, before you can get to the point of even being able to approach cosmic law, let alone cosmic love, you have to be able to deal with yourself. And what did it say in the Bible, in Exodus? The first thing you have to do in order to get out of the bondage of the lower mind. You have to throw down the rod and it'll turn into a serpent. What does that mean? It means the rod is your spine, and it means you have to no longer depend on yourself. And when you throw down dependence on yourself, that which is the serpent, the kundalini, the spirit will come alive within you, and you'll be able to flee the bondage of the lower mind of Egypt. What's the second thing you have to do in order to get out of the guilt of your mind? You have to stay in the house. You have to stay in your meditation. And then what will happen? All of this garbage will pass over. It'll pass over if you stay in the house. So when you're no longer depending on yourself, you're into meditation. The energy rises up within you, which is the serpent, which is the spirit. You stay in the house in meditation. That thing will pass over you, and you'll go out into the desert. And when you go out into the desert of meditation, the first thing that's going to happen is your emotions are going to start playing tricks on you. It's called the Red Sea. And when you get to that Red Sea, when your emotions are trying to drive you back to all of the problems that you had before, what's going to happen? You're going to look up and the sea's going to open and you're going to be able to cross the emotions and head towards the promised land. You're going to be able to overcome all of these things we talked about in Exodus. Exodus has nothing to do with 40,000 Jews trying to find a street in the desert for 40 years. It has nothing to do with that. That's silly. It is silly for grown people to sit with a book and say they wandered for 40 years. You can't wander for 40 years. You look for the street. Where is it? I don't know. For 40 years you're going to walk around. Never found it. I mean, even if you're so stupid that you don't know which direction it is, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Keep following that direction, you're going to come to something. But it's not talking about that. You wander within yourself. And the number 4 means the fourfold nature. You wander within yourself, looking and searching. And that's what this world has done. People have done. It is a zoo. It is disgusting. People are continuing to wander, and they drop bombs, and they murder, and they separate themselves from each other, and they condemn other people because they don't look like they do, or they don't act like they do. And everybody is separated into their little groups and churches, and they put stained glass on these windows so they can't see the mess that's outside, and they sing inside. But when they go home, it's the same thing. It hasn't changed. There's been no change. It's the violence. My God. You have all of this religion in this country. This is a Christian, Jewish Christian country, and it is a cesspool of drug addiction. Why? Why? Because nobody has ever listened to Jesus Christ. Nobody has ever listened to the Bible. It says, the kingdom is within you. And so here it says, you throw down your dependence on the spine. You lift yourself up and you cross that which is the Red Sea. And then we get out to the desert and we get to the point of Mar. Now let me show you something interesting here. And this is the point of everything. There are 4 or 5 stages of consciousness in the human mind in Greek. The first is earth. The second is water. The third is air. The fourth is fire. And everything is based on this. Everything is based on this. Life is based on this. Your existence is based on this. If you take grass seed and you put it in the earth, you put water on it, it comes up into the air. It is touched by the sun, the fire, and you have new life. When Moses was a little kid, they took him. They put him in a little basket in the water. He was taken out of the water, and he found his way to the mountaintop, which is the air. And on the mountaintop, he touched the burning bush, which is the fire, and he became a new person. Everything is that. Everything is that. Baptism. You take your head, you put it in the water, you come up into the air, you're touched by the Spirit, which is the fire, and you have a new mind. But you can't do it by touching real water. All it does is wet your head. You have to take your mind, you put it into the second stage of consciousness in your meditation. You will rise up into the third stage of consciousness, which is air. That's why it says in the Bible, we will rise to meet Jesus in the air. And then you will be touched by the fire, the renewed mind. Everything is like that. Okay? Now, when they come out of Egypt, it is the earth. You come to the Red Sea, which is the water, and Mara. Then you come to that next stage. What happened? They ate quail at night. Where did the birds fly? Through the air. What did they get in the morning? Manna. Where did the bread come? Out of the air. And in 2 weeks you will conclude this particular baptism, which Exodus is, when you get to the fire mountain. Everything is this. Everything is that. And so this is, the description here is trying to take this, look. What I say to so many people is absolutely outrageous because they can't deal with it. Their minds won't print what I say. Their minds won't print what comes out of the Bible. Their minds is not, they're not capable. Do you see those calendars I made up in the back there? I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning with the computer. And I got the calendars, and I'm looking at the calendar, and I got this big computer, which is the church, and I got this big Epson printer, and I mean, I'm ready to go. And I get the calendar, and I tried to print it, and it wouldn't print. And I tried to print it, and it wouldn't print, and it wouldn't print, and it wouldn't print, and it wouldn't. And I kept looking at the printer, and the printer said, buffer page is full. What is buffer page? Jimmy, buffer, how do I got buffer? And you get freaky at 2:30 in the morning when the thing won't print. You know what you say, I will never leave this room until it prints. And it wouldn't print, it wouldn't print, and it wouldn't print, and I couldn't print the stupid calendar. And finally I did the unpardonable sin. I went to the book. And I opened the book, and I said, book. You know what the book said? If you get a sign that says buffer page is full, it means that your printer does not have enough memory to do the job that you're trying to get it to do. So I looked down the other end of the room where my business office is, and I got this little laptop computer that you can put in your, you can put it in your briefcase, little thing. And I got a little printer, a quarter of the size of the big printer. I said, I wonder, am I going to screw everything up? And when I took the program and I loaded it into this little laptop, and then I got to the time, and I pressed the button print, and I watched. Bzz, 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 bzz. One had the memory, even though it didn't look like it would be able to do it, and the big fancy looking one couldn't do it. Couldn't do it? Do you see? What I'm saying to you is, moving from Exodus to this point of the mountain of the law is for what? It's for, what I have to do with the big computer? I have to take that big printer up to this place in Tom's River, and the guy has to put a new card in there. And then when he puts the new card in there, he has to put these new chips in there so it will have enough memory so that it can then print what it's being told. Do you know what he had me do? When you go into meditation all this time, you know what you're doing? You're taking this computer to have new cards and new chips put in so that then you'll be able to print out what's coming from up there. And I'm telling you, unless you take that computer, no matter how much you read, no matter how much you sing, no matter how religious you are, you're never ever going to be able to print that in your mind because it's not capable of taking the information, just like that printer isn't capable of taking the information that was going in. And so this is it. You've got to do it. You've got to take yourself. You've got to put yourself into meditation. You've got to rise up into that third stage of meditation. You've got to be touched by that. And it all comes within you. And that's what this is all about. And then when you've done that, see, when you've gotten to that point where you've gone into the meditation and you've done that, then you turn on the printer inside of you and you can understand cosmic law. It'll print. But it will not print until you first take the computer that's sitting on your head between your ears and have it renewed and have it changed and have a new board put in. And it doesn't make it because you can't deal with this. See? The left side of your brain is not capable. I don't mean you sitting here now, I'm talking in generalities, of handling what's coming from the right until you get it changed, until you have it changed within. And you have it changed within by understanding that energy that goes up the spine, that it's talked about in the book of Revelation, that it's talked about in the Bible, until you understand about the emotional nature, how you have to look up, until you understand it, you have to stay in the house of your meditation, until you cast yourself that tree of life into the water of Mara and get rid of the bitterness inside of you, until you reach that point where you feed on yourself quail inside, and then you can eat the manna bread truth in the morning, until you and what happened? Until you take the rod and touch the stone and the water will flow. What's it say in Newsweek that I'm going to use? It said if you take that energy which raises itself up the spine, it will touch the pineal gland and the melatonin will flow. What's it say in the Bible? You take the rod, you touch the stone, and the water will flow. And then last week, Moses held his arms up. And as long as he held his arms up, his side won. Hey, go get him! But as soon as he pricked his nose or scratched his rear end, his side lost. He couldn't leave his hand. I got an itch. You can't. I got to. They lost. They won. They lost. They won. They lost. They won. And we're believing this literally. It means when you sit on the mountaintop and you sit on the stone, which is the pineal gland, Joshua, Jesus will be in the valley fighting the dweller of the valley. You don't have to fight that dweller. But you got to sit on the mountaintop on the stone and you got to keep your energy up. And as long as you keep your energy up, guess what? You're going to win. But if you drop it, guess what? You're going to lose. Big time. And so we get to this. See? Because you've come through that point of meditation. You've come through that point of starting to change yourself. You've come to the point where the computer inside of your head has new chips put in it. And now you can print. Now you can understand what's coming from the right side. Other than that, you can't. And it doesn't make any difference. I watched the other night, and I don't think there's a nicer, kinder, gentler, more decent human being than Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was on teaching the other night, but what was he teaching about? God's war. God's war, he's coming. This war to end all wars is coming. God doesn't make wars. People make wars. And it doesn't make any difference who he is. It's not true. It's blasphemy itself when you say God's going to make a war. The war that God makes, the Armageddon, is what? It's that fourth stage of consciousness, which is fire, which comes down and burns away all of the fear, all of the guilt, all of the hurt, all of those things which have hurt you all of your life. That's God's war. God's war is for one purpose and one purpose only. Not to destroy anything, but to set you free, clean you up, and send you on to the promised land. That's God's war. Hey. I'll do that again, Albert. Whoa. Sounds good. So it's not finding any fault. It's simply finding the truth that God does one thing and one thing only, and that makes things good. Okay, so we get to this point now of coming to understand cosmic law. And you're going to read what I'm going to show you. Is strange and different, but that's why it's a Bible. We're going to show something that's mystical. You see, well, okay, let's go to page 62 and 63. Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18. Now, the next chapter that we get into of Exodus, and in order to catch up, you'd have to get those other tapes or whatever. But this shows us the evolution. We have come so far through this point of Exodus, learning to do what? Deal with ourselves. We've taken the computer inside here. We've brought it to the repair shop, okay? And they put new chips in it. In other words, God has put new chips in your computer, so now you can understand and you can print cosmic law. Otherwise, you can't. Don't tell me that they can, because I'll tell you something. For thousands of years, people have looked at the Ten Commandments and don't understand one of them. What is it? Thou shalt not kill. The next page you turn in the Bible, there's 27 descriptions of how you can kill. That's not what it said. And any mystic, the people of the East knew what was being said there. You cannot kill. You cannot kill. Well, we're going to have the death penalty. No, you're not. Oh, we're going to take this brutal serial killer and we're going to kill him. No, you're not. You're going to dispatch his body. And that stuff that he had in his mind that caused him to do all this horror has never been straightened out, has never been flushed away, has never been washed away, has never been changed. And Johnny, who raped and pillaged and murdered, will wind up in another woman's womb. And she will have her little baby. And she'll say, I'm going to name him Johnny. And then one day it'll be, here's Johnny. Back to do it all over again, because we never stopped to work and to find out and to somehow work with that mind and purge that mind of all of that stuff. So the karma goes on and on and on. So the Bible says you can't kill anything. Don't think you can. But we'll get into that. We have a couple of chips to put into the computer before we get to that point. Okay? So we come now into a purpose here. Now here's the purpose. Let's take a look at it. We use the analogy of the computer and the printer, and that's a pretty good analogy. So let's say God is the computer. You are the printer. Okay? But your printer does not have enough memory to handle this stuff that's coming from God. So the instructions are, you go into the computer place, which is meditation, and the new chips are put in there. And what's the purpose of this? There was a time when you and God, as it says there, when there was one mind and all was in one accord. Okay? Everything was God consciousness. That's been taken away. Now you've got this 10%, God's got the 90%, you can't get in there. So we go into all of these instructions about how this is to work, how we are to understand this, okay? And that's fine. So what's the purpose of this now? The purpose of this is you take your computer and your printer, you take your mind, and in your meditation, you come to this point where you open yourself to this new way. In meditation, you start to receive. You start to understand. You start to change. The way you think starts to change. Once all of this garbage from all of our lives has been washed away, in other words, the printer has a new memory in it and so forth. Once this has all happened, okay, now you have this oneness again. Now this law can be energized back into you. In other words, what we're talking about right now is in order for you to survive, you had to separate from your physical and go into a spiritual in meditation. What's happening right now is since you have done this, the spiritual that you have received is now going to be rejoined to the physical. You're going to get your printer back, and the printer is going to be able to work properly. You're going to get your mind back, and your mind's going to be able to work properly. It's a reunification. It's a reunification because now you're going to be tuned, okay, to that which is spirit. Let me put it this way. You had Ra, you had your mind. But you didn't have EL, which was the power within you. And you didn't have understanding of spirit because there was no meditation. Now, as you've come through this and you're into the meditation, Isis has returned. And Isis has joined with Ra. The spirit has joined with the mind. Isn't that nice? Thank you. And it produces EL, which is the power within. Okay? That's what this whole purpose of this is. So you've come into Exodus. So Exodus is psychology. In Exodus, you move out of the lower mind, you move from the left side, you open yourself to the right side because you're moving across the desert, you're moving within yourself to energize something totally new. This is called change. It is not repairing what was broken, it is changing the whole thing. You become a new person. And now you can go back and become physically a new person. In other words, the spirit energizes the physical. Our spirit born out of meditation will work with our mind and our desires. What has happened? Let me show you what has happened. Go to page 928 and you'll look at Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Keep your finger where you are. But Romans chapter 12 on page 928. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, it says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may be able to prove what is good." How are you going to renew your mind? You can't renew your mind by listening to somebody else's opinion. That person may be wrong. You cannot renew your mind by reading a book. Somebody may have put something in that book and changed it. There are 10,000 Bibles printed by 10,000 different companies, and they're all different. Somebody changes things. You can only renew your mind by renewing your mind. You have to go within yourself and allow this thing to pass over. And until that energy comes from the right side, then it restores you back. Then you've got the printer back. Then you've got that capacity now where the spirit has rejoined the physical. The spirit comes back to rejoin the physical, and you're together once again. Let me show you, if I can, what's going on here, okay? And in the basis of the story, this is what's going on. First of all, let me give you the description between social law and cosmic law. You have always understood in religion social law. And the social law says, you will, you won't. That's social law. And you know that's part of, that's the basis of religion. Cosmic law doesn't say you will, you won't. Cosmic law says you can, you can't. Big difference. Cosmic law is telling you what it is possible to do and what it is impossible to do. Social law says to you, we don't know anything about this, but we made up these. You will not wear slacks because you're a lady. Or you go to hell. God hates women in slacks on. What if God's a woman with slacks? Would that be great? God will see you now. Okay. You won't do this. You will do that. You will do this. You won't do that. You won't do this. You will do that. You will do this. You won't do that. Wipe it off. I don't care. I don't want to hear about it. But cosmic law says, listen, you can do this, but you can't do that. You'll create a problem for yourself. Now, you get Newsweek, and everybody believes Newsweek. And Newsweek says, guess what? You can energize something inside of your brain. And when you energize this thing inside of your brain, you can prevent cancers, you can heal cancers, you can do all of these things. You can do that. You can do that. But the part that they didn't put in was you can't do that unless you enter into meditation. They say you can go out, buy some melatonin pills with cow's blood in them or something like that, but that's not what the Bible's talking about. Bovine juice. What is it? Bovine juices? What? Okay. Now, here you go. Forget that. Forget I said that. Scratch it out. Overruled. What is it? Judge Ito says overruled. I mean, is this? I mean, look. Is it? This is where the world. This is where your world is. I mean, I don't know. OJ. Maybe OJ did this. I don't know. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. Can you imagine? Wonder if you get arrested. You got arrested, and the police say, "Oh, you did it. We have the evidence." And you know you didn't do it. I didn't do it. Yes, you did. We have evidence. Well, we'll get the policeman in the court, and he'll prove it. And the policeman comes in the court. I says, excuse me, officer, you have evidence against Benita? Yes, I do, but I'm not going to testify because I don't want to incriminate myself. What's this all about? I mean, this is how crazy the world, this is how bizarre that it's gotten. See? So what are you going to depend on this guy? And this guy is out there with a gun. Running around the streets protecting you. Is this something? Now, what I'm saying, who are you going to depend on? Me. Thank you. You graduated. Okay. Now here it is. Exodus is showing you how to, first of all, come to grips with yourself. Second thing it's going to show you is how to come to grips with cosmic law, so you will know what to do. And remember, you cannot understand cosmic law until, first of all, you into meditation, so you come to deal with it. You cannot do it. Any more than I can get that printer to print. It will never print until I get those chips put into it. You will never understand cosmic law until you get those meditational chips put in you. It will not work. That's the foundation of the temple. Jesus comes along. Cosmic what? Love. Okay? And the love is the building. Now, what's the problem? You cannot live in the building if it doesn't have a foundation. And you cannot live in the foundation. So the two, and that's why he says, I haven't come to do away with, I've come to fulfill. Okay? You This is your problem, and this is religion's problem. You're trying to have Jesus, which is cosmic love, and you've never dealt with yourself, and you've never dealt with cosmic law. You can't. You're trying to live in a building without the foundation. Can't be done. See? That's why this is so important. And a lot of people say, well, I don't believe that Old Testament because it's all this ancient history. It has nothing to do with history. It is the most unhistorical thing you've ever seen in your life. There's not one bit of history in it. Okay, so that's where we come to. If you have no foundation, you can have no house. It's that simple. So Moses and the law is the foundation. Jesus and the Spirit is... What did Jesus say? Tear down this house, and in 3 days I'll build a new one. He's not talking about a house. He's talking about that which we have built on the foundation of this mystical and occult stuff which is in the Old Testament. Now, Moses expresses the law physically because it is the change of our mind. And many of you have gotten your printers back and you had the new chips put into them. I know you have. And you're able now to print this stuff. And when I start speaking it in a couple of weeks, you'll understand it. But what do you have to do before? See what we've done? We've taken Moses, the earth. We've gone through the water, like I said. We've gone through the air, like I said. What do we have missing? In 2 weeks, where do we go? We go to the fire mountain. And then the baptism is complete, and then the law can be given out from the mountain. Then you'll understand it. Then the chips are all set in your computer, and you understand it, see. Once Jesus fulfills the law mystically, then the renewed and fulfilled spirit can reconnect to the physical. You are not supposed to be a spirit. You are a human being. Forever, as long as you live, and you will live forever, you will always be a person. You will be a physical person forever. You will never be a spirit. What is no fun? Incidentally, I'll tell you why it's no fun to be a spirit. Because Debbie told me that she found out that on October the 18th in Camden, New Jersey, at this beautiful new amphitheater which they have built in Camden next to the aquarium, will be Kitaro. Spirits don't go to Kitaro. Spirits can only be inside of the people that go to Kitaro concerts. See? So that's why it's beautiful. So now, what are we going to learn? You shouldn't you shouldn't drop bombs on people and women and children. You shouldn't discriminate against people because of their color or because of their sex or because you shouldn't separate from people. You should all come together. You shouldn't brutalize nature. You shouldn't brutalize animals. Everything should be, but we can't. Why? Because our printer doesn't print the instructions. So now, some of you have your printers ready, you're printing beautifully, you understand your instructions. Can you imagine if the whole world got their computers redone and they had new printers and so they could understand the instructions? They wouldn't drop bombs, they wouldn't separate, they wouldn't, and they will. And this is the beautiful thing, this change will come. Now, here we go to Exodus 18 where we're at. My God, I haven't even started yet, and here you're ready to go home. Here's the story. In Exodus 18, you have Moses, which is you. You have his wife, Zipporah. The wife means the emotions. And you have 2 sons, and the sons means the desires of the mind. Okay? He has his emotional nature, he has his desires. What did he have to do? He had to go into the desert, and he left them behind. He's separated from the thoughts of his mind. Take no thought. Okay? He leaves the bondage of the mind. He leaves his emotions. He leaves his desires. He crosses them, and he goes through all of these things we've talked about. Now, the connected physical is Moses, Zipporah, his wife, and his 2 sons. The meditation is you cross the desert. You don't take them with you. You leave them. Okay? The reconnection now takes place. Somebody brings Zipporah and the 2 sons back to Moses because now he can live with them. Now, the desires of his heart are not what they used to be. He doesn't desire the same thing. Now his emotional nature is not the way it was before. So now his emotions and his desires can be reconnected. Now your emotions and your desires can be reconnected because you've traveled across the desert and you've touched the serpent and you've come to the spring of bitterness and you've lifted your hands to fight the battle, and all of these things have happened. But now you can start to understand. So after experiencing this, Moses, you leave the wife, the emotions, leave the desires, go across the desert into meditation. Now what happens? Look at Exodus chapter 18 and verse 2. When Jethro the priest, the father, heard of and the Lord had then verse 2, then Jethro, Moses' father, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, and her 2 sons, which was named Gershom and Eleazar, and delivered them back to Moses. We're now prepared to come into the fullness, which is the physical and the spiritual together. Now we can come back. Before you were acting, I don't care how religious or what church you were in, you were acting totally out of the physical. Because you hadn't done nothing with your mind. Had done nothing with your mind. Amazingly enough, the stone that the builders rejected, which Jesus said that turned out to be the most important of all, is the pineal stone, the pineal gland of the brain. And there is not one of us who have ever paid any attention. Now, of course, with Newsweek magazine, everybody is all excited about it. But that's what it is. And in Exodus 18:2, we're now prepared. See, now look what the names mean. Jethro, the priest. Okay? Jethro means gain. Okay? This is the gain. The gain is progress in reuniting the spirit and the physical. What is the gain? The gain is your entire life. But before, you were just a physical person. You had no connection. And don't tell me you had a connection to God, because you sang about it, you read about it, you went to church all of your life, but you never broke down that barrier between the left and the right side, so you didn't know. There was no connection. It is exactly the same as the computer. I got the computer. I can make the calendar. The calendar looks nice, but I can't print it because it stops there. It can't get in. And so it has to be changed, and when they changed it, they took down the barrier, and I'll be able to print it. It doesn't, see, and the thing is, right now you can say, oh, this guy's full of baloney. But folks, look at the world you live in. Is this the way it's supposed to be? Is this the world for 2, 5, 6,000 years people are supposed to sing religious songs inside of churches and then go outside and murder each other? Is that the way it's supposed to be? Are the kids supposed to be brutalized? Are the animals supposed to be brutalized? Are women supposed to be degraded? Are minority people, are oppressed people supposed to be beaten down and beaten down and beaten? Do you hear about the women's conference in China and all the bizarre things coming out, what's done to women all over this world? I saw a guy on television from Lebanon, and his wife got it. She says, I married him, and I brought my 2 daughters with me. And when I brought him into the house, he took them into bed. And they interviewed him, and he said, well, I'm the head of the house. I'm the man of the house. And when I'm happy, everybody's happy. And the camera panned over to a barred window, and there was these 2 little 12, 13-year-old girls looking out the window. And you know the thing is, they've all got God. They're all God. They got nothing. They got nothing. And we have it right in this country, maybe a little different, but right in this country. Because there's a disrespect for the female, there's a disrespect for a woman, because in this country we do not know of the God spirit, which is Isis, which is female. We don't know it. We've changed it into a men's club. See? We don't know. And until you cut down that and get that thing changed, renewed, you'll never understand. And that's what has to be done. That's why you have to do this. So Jethro means gain, because we're going to come back into a oneness. Zipporah, his wife, means female bird. Well, when the female bird, when it doesn't fly, the emotions. But then when she returns, she will be the spirit. She will fly. And he has 2 sons, Gershom, which means expelled. Expelled. Driven out. And we have driven out the thoughts. We've driven out our desires. But what does Eleazar mean? God is his help. Our desires have been renewed. Our desires that were negative under the lower were expelled. Our desires now have been renewed and have been returned to us, because we don't desire the things that we used to think. So now that was happening. Now the second part of Exodus 18 is a very critical, important part for you. It impacts on our existence. The narrative states that Moses was making all the decisions. And that's what you do, and that's what I do. Make all of the decisions. And Jethro tells Moses, it's too much for you. It's too much stress on you. It's too much of a burden for you. It's too hard. You've got to appoint judges. And he appoints judges. And the judges are an inward quality within you. In other words, when you take yourself into meditation, now you'll get answers. Now you'll be able to reach conclusions. Now you'll be able to respond to things that come against you differently than you used to. See, Moses was judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Let me show you something. Go to page 859. Hurry up. Luke 20. Hurry up. I got to... We need to get more time, but Huh? Yeah, but I know, but at the other hand. Okay, Luke 22. All right? And I want to show you. And in Luke 22, verse 29, and I appoint you as a kingdom. I appoint you unto, and I appoint unto you a kingdom, that you may eat and drink in my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. You going to take it literally? There are no 12 tribes of Israel. What are you going to do with that? They don't exist. If you were to take a look at your brain, I don't know if you were going to have, but if you take a look at your brain, you have 6 aspects, 6 physical things on the left side, 6 physical parts on the right side. Those 12 are the 12 tribes. How do I know that? Look what it says to you. Notice, I appoint unto you a what? What's it say? A what? I appoint unto you a kingdom. Now, if I appoint unto you a kingdom, look at page 853, Luke chapter 17. I appoint unto you a kingdom so that you can judge the 12 tribes. I appoint unto you a kingdom so that you can judge the 12 tribes. I appoint unto you a kingdom so that you can judge the 12 tribes. Look at Luke chapter 17. Look at verse 21. Neither shall they say it's here or there, for behold, the kingdom is within you. I appoint you a kingdom that you may judge. And now we have judges appointed within us because the meditation process has taken us out of the bondage of all of the traditions. The hell with the traditions. I had somebody talk to me, say, well, all of the traditions. We have our family tradition. We have our religious tradition. We have my church tradition. We sing. We do all of these things. But they never look at Jesus Christ, who turns around and says, you have made the law of God of no effect by your tradition. No traditions, no patriotism, no churches, no belonging. You judge the 12 tribes within yourself. The important statement here is we sit on the thrones, it says. And it says in Isaiah 66:1, heaven is my throne, the earth is the throne is heaven. And Jesus says God's kingdom is heaven. And Jesus says God's kingdom is within you. You sit within yourself. For God's sakes, the only enemies you have in this world are within you, are your thoughts. What do? So what we see here is the development of our total person. Exodus has nothing to do with groups of people leaving Egypt, going across the desert. Exodus has to do with you leaving the control of the negative side of your mind and crossing the emotional side over to the promised land, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. And then you sit at the right hand of the Father. So it doesn't mean that we've finished having problems, obviously. It simply means that now we have inner help. What you are looking at here is a change. Now here's the problem. What does the Bible say? Repent. Okay? But religion has not caused you to repent. What religion has caused you to do is repair. You fixed the same old thing. You didn't change it. See, we've been angry, we've been greedy, we've been violent, but it hasn't changed a thing. Oh, wait, when do we get nice? Look at you in church. Aren't you nice? Look at how calm you are. You have your Bibles. Look, oh God, you're going to sing songs. You're going to meditate. You're very nice. And then maybe tonight somewhere in some house, in some place where you go, it'll be like Saigon. Bang! It'll be all over the place. Why? Because there's something still within each one of us. And please, I'm not pointing a finger at you because I can do Saigon great. You know, there's still a couple of chips missing from the old print. I understand that. I got a couple of chips missing. That's all right. Okay. So this is it, see? But this is how we do it. Moses, see, is a total change. The person has changed. That's why he can be reunited with his emotions. And total change, completely different person. The old person doesn't exist anymore. It's a new person. And many of you that's happened to because you think differently than you used to, and you know you do. The person has changed within you. See? Right. But see, what we have done, and this is the way we do it. I'll show you what repair is instead of repent, and then we'll be out of here. We say, forgive me. I didn't mean to do that. I'm really sorry. I really am. I'm very sorry that I offended you. That's a trick. Because what we're really doing is protecting our image. If the other person doesn't forgive, we've dumped the whole thing on them. See? Now we can be at ease. Your image is repaired. You've said you were sorry. And under your breath and in your mind and in your subconscious, you said, son of a... So if that person forgives, it's fine. If that person doesn't forgive, he's guilty. He's the one. I said I was sorry. Did I? Repent doesn't mean what religion means. It does not mean apologize. It doesn't mean giving up drinking or smoking. It means backing away from the Pharaoh. It means backing away from the control of the mind. It means entering the wilderness and overcoming the emotions. It means bringing that wall down so that new information can come into you. It means you cease to be and God is. It is not about what you do. It is about your total being. The word repent in Aramaic means return back to the garden. What does the song say? May I return to the beginning, back to where you were. You've come out of the garden and you're in with all of the weeds and all of the wild things and all of the wild animals and all of the things that scream at you in here. Now it's saying, come back. Come back. Return to your source. Return to the beginning. You can't let your emotions control you. You can't let your desires control you. So Zipporah and her sons, the emotions and desires, will be renewed under the judges. The new thought process born out of meditation, crossing the Red Sea. Come back. Bring yourself back. Bring yourself back. And you do that when you sit in the meditation. And even if you think, oh my God, I get bored. So what? For 30 minutes you can't get bored. Big deal, you get bored. But you go back. And it doesn't make, if you get bored, and if you don't like it, and if you didn't have a good time, and if you didn't think anything happened, when you sit in the dark and you just sit there, in spite of your thoughts, in spite of the way you feel, the pineal opens anyhow. And the melatonin flows anyhow. What do you say? Oh, well, I had cake, I had lasagna, I had zucchini, I had all of these things. But because you didn't like it, is your body going to say, well, I'm not going to digest it then? We didn't get anything out of this. I'm just going to let all this mess sit here and gurgle. And a lot of times it does.
Billy,
but
excuse me, wait a minute. Let Eve tell you about her two sons. No,
What?
let Eve tell you about her two sons.
Can you get this? Okay, coming down. Eve, jolly ho. Eve has a delightful. She will take us right to Piccadilly Square. Turn up, Eve. Come on, stand up and tell us. Now, this is great.
I don't know what I'm talking about, John. Oh, yes. I have two twin boys. They're, this is my husband, Dieter. They're 10 and a half, and they go into Sunday school every week. And 1 week they were given an assignment. They had to do a meditation by themselves 3 or 4 times a week. And I didn't even know they had that assignment. Anyway, one evening the house got very quiet, and my husband and I were downstairs, I think, in the basement, and we came up to see what the boys were up to. And they were both in their bedroom together. They have separate rooms, but they went in one of the rooms and they meditated together, because they remembered that they hadn't done enough meditations that week and they hadn't done their assignments. And they said, oh, we have to do this because we promised that we would meditate this week. And they sat down and they meditated together without being told by anyone. So, they're learning to do it by themselves now and reminding themselves. So that was
great.
Very good.
That is good. And you know what's so beautiful about that? Because when you read this Newsweek article, that is just as important, that melatonin flows in them and then that pineal opens up. So but this is what the story's about. Next week, we're going to just take a pause, and I'm going to take you into a venture way out in the east. And we're going to sit and listen to this very strange man whose name was Bhagwan. And he got involved with a bunch of funky people, but it didn't change the fact that he was a brilliant, brilliant man of spirit and psychology. And why I wanted to return, because the week after that we're going to go to the fire on the mountain. And I don't want you to go to the fire mountain until we've spent a little time with him talking about love and law. And he has things to say to you that I'll convey to you that will just amaze you and make you feel so good. And then we'll go up to the fire mountain. And when we have been touched by the fire mountain, then we will go to the cosmic 10 commandments, which are like anything you've ever heard before in your life. So that's what we'll do, okay? Whew, great. Okay, thank you very much. And John will come on.